Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it. So here's what you get from Canada.
Welcome to another episode of the Worst of the Best podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and with me today, I have another guest co-host with me today. My brother Jason is unable to be here today, but I'm very excited to have with us today Lauren Conlin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. How's it going?
It's going very well. I'm very excited to have you for two reasons. One, my brother doesn't like true crime. So he's not a big true crime guy. We've done a couple of episodes of true crime. He begrudgingly enjoys it. He's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. He'll say afterwards. And two, you are a true crime specialist. So I'm excited to talk true crime. I love a good murder story. And this is your thing. Want to explain to people where you come from? What's your background?
Yes, right now, this is my wheelhouse. I say right now because I tend to have ADHD when it comes to my career. I started off as an entertainment reporter who always had an interest in crime and I guess the legal system, if you will, but I'm very lazy. So I never wanted to go to law school. I guess thinking about it now, I would love to get a master's in forensic psychology because I do believe that people who are interested in crime, they get a bad reputation for being creepy or obsessed with murder. And that's just not the case. For me, I like to learn about the human brain. I like to learn about the human psyche. And I'm fascinated with the justice system. And I think that you'll see that through a couple of the stories that we discussed today. But just about me, I'm a podcaster and a reporter. Again, I cover pop culture and crime. You can find me on Court TV, Nancy Grace, and through my podcast, The Outlier. And then I have another show on Wednesday nights that I do with a homicide prosecutor, Jarrett Ferrantino, and that's called Primetime Crime. And that's also on YouTube.
Awesome. Look at you, boy. I'm a nobody. Me talk on microphone.
I'm a nobody too, man. Don't worry. I make it sound like a lot, but it's not.
Well, you sound very professional. That's what I meant to say. Me and my brother, we're so far from professional. We just have a good time on the microphone and on podcasting. So thanks for taking a chance on our small little podcast, and hopefully your audience will come over and see what we're about. So if your audience, some of your fans and audience come over here because you were on here, I want to explain what we do on the show for that audience, but people that listen to us, they kind of know anyways. But it's called the worst of the best for a reason. We take a variety of different topics from actors, movies, music. It doesn't matter the topic, and everything has a best of. So for example, a music group will have a best-selling album or a fan favorite album. But even if something's the favorite or the best of, there's something that's going to be the worst, meaning your favorite album will have a song that you might skip, right? Even though it's your favorite album. So that's the premise of the show. So how does true crime fit in there? Well, it's hard to say, hey, this is the best crime because no crime should be labeled the best of. But some stories or some true crime stories, they're fascinating. They're intrigued. Just like I said, a study of why did this happen or what was the murder? What was the reason? These are stories you put together that kind of fit a category of interest for you at this moment of time. So this is the best things you want to talk about right now regarding true crime to bring to the show. And at the end of the show, we're going to pick what we think is the worst for whatever reason we want. You could say it's the worst reason to murder or the worst way to get caught, whatever the reason is. I don't even have a pick yet because I'm going to hear the stories from you. And I'm going to decide at the end. You're going to decide after me, and that's it. That's the small part of the show anyways, just what the worst is. But it's just going to be fun to talk about murder.
It's definitely an interesting topic, and I also just want to add that it's really rewarding to work with victims' families as well as survivors. I have to just say that right now, where it's like, yes, sometimes a murder story can be interesting, but I'm always careful because I do feel like these are people's lives that they're living. These stories are not just here for our entertainment. And I think it's a good reminder to always just put out there.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that you work with some of these victims. Yeah, of course. If anyone's listening that's at a murdered level.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. However, it's one of those things like laugh or cry. That's part of our world that we live in. It's almost like it's tragic as these things are. One thing I've always said about regarding true crime, the reason why I watch them on like Netflix, some of the series, things like that, or even talk about it on this podcast sometimes, is the way I look at it. It's not for the you're saying entertainment value. the way I look at it, it's like the story or the event, it's happened.
Yeah.
This thing has happened. It's horrible. But do we never talk about it? The event has happened. So do we never speak about it because it is tragic? I think it's important to give a voice to the victims, to have their story told. How did we get here? Because the hope is when we study the criminals or their behavior or how did they get there, maybe we can mitigate or stop further stuff like this happening.
Totally agree.
Okay. That's my serious cap on, just to less people think I'm being glib about murder. I'm not, because I, like you, I thought the same thing about doing forensic science. Believe it or not, that's something I thought about. But like you too, I'm lazy. So let's get into it.
Yes, this one's crazy, Ryan. And it's crazy because you can't believe that this actually happened. You cannot believe this headline. And I feel like anybody who read this headline when the crime first allegedly occurred, and I say allegedly because this murder trial is actually underway. This case is unadjudicated. So gotta say allegedly. No one's been convicted yet. Yeah, but this is the suitcase murder. So Sarah Boone is a woman in her 40s in Winter Park, Florida, and she has been accused of allegedly zipping her boyfriend, George Torres, in a suitcase, not letting him out and causing him to asphyxiate. He was also in his 40s, and I just learned this during opening statements on Friday, October 18th, that George Torres only weighed 103 pounds. And Sarah Boone, her defense here right now is battered spouse syndrome. This is crazy. I've done 3 podcast episodes on this. I saw a police report from this, a couple incidents, 2 police reports from 2018, 2019. They both seem at fault, if you ask me. I'm not going to say I don't believe a woman. Sarah Boone, though, my opinion is that she's narcissistic. She's crazy, not mentally ill. There's a big difference. She's just a crazy girl that you would not want to date. But most of you are probably wondering, well, how did this guy get in the suitcase in the first place and allow her to do this? Well, since we only have her side of the story is they were drinking. They like to drink a lot, and they were playing hide and seek. And she said, "Oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so funny if you just jumped in the suitcase and I zipped you up?" And he says, "Yeah, I guess," in his drunkenness, or maybe he wasn't. I don't know his alcohol levels. I come to think of it, the autopsy reports in Florida are not always released. In certain states, you can grab them. Okay. Certain states you can't. So I haven't seen this, but what's crazy, and it's very damning to Sarah's case, is that she recorded this. So you can look this up online. She's on the couch or wherever she's sitting, and there's a suitcase in a corner, and there's a man yelling, Sarah, I can't breathe, babe. I can't breathe. Let me out. Sarah. And she's saying, that's my name. Don't get it out. Like in this ridiculous drunken voice, making it very obvious that she doesn't care. So according to her, she goes upstairs. She goes to sleep. She forgets. She wakes up. And he's found deceased in the suitcase. Couple things that I'm not sure about. He had a black eye, some contusions on his head. Right. Just some things that don't necessarily match up to being trapped in a suitcase unless you're kind of punching yourself to get out. Witness on Friday said there was some kind of thud. Maybe the suitcase was pushed somewhere. We don't know. But that is the situation. And I am not even scratching the surface on Sarah Boone. You got to look this woman up. She really is insane.
There's a couple true crime YouTube channels that I follow as well, and this is one that I've seen the video of, and it's odd, it's equally as odd as it is disturbing, that she's talking to her boyfriend through the suitcase and he's moving around and she's like, and then she goes to bed. This thing, if she did commit, at the very least, it's like whatever the term is when you didn't know I was going to murder you, but you ended up because of negligence. Is that manslaughter, I guess, at the very least?
She's actually being charged with second-degree murder. And if you want to hear something insane, is right before the trial started, her in Florida, second-degree murder minimum is 22 and a half. No, I think the minimum is maybe 18 years or 22 years, something like that. But the maximum is life. And she was offered a deal before the trial started last week. They said, we will give you 15 years if you plead guilty to manslaughter. And she's already served 5. This happened in 2020. And bitch said no. I mean, I blame her lawyers.
She's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. She'd probably be out in 7. I mean, yeah. Right. And yeah, anyway, but nuts.
Well, yeah, it's a horrible story. What a way to go. I've often thought about when we talk about true crime or hear about them. These people live a life. There was a time they were babies. They're learning how to walk. They go to grade school. They get their first job. They have their first kiss. They lose their virginity. All these things that we experience. And then all of a sudden he dies in a suitcase. There's a point where you're at point zero and then your life ends because who would have guessed that your life would end in a suitcase?
That's a great point. I never actually thought about that, thinking of somebody's timeline or those movie flashbacks when someone's about to die or something, their whole life.
I always get that from these things. There's a time when their life wasn't this way, and all of a sudden now here you are. What brought him to the suitcase? Why did he choose Sarah Boone? Why did they start dating? What was the attraction? That's the stuff I find fascinating. The murder is, yes, that's the entertainment factor that some people get it. How did he die? I get it, but I'm always fascinated. How did we get here? Who is Sarah Boone to this guy? How did they meet? What was the relationship like? How long did they date for? Did they ever go on vacation together?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have a lot of money. They met at a bar in Florida. Sarah was married before she had a son. Their relationship was pretty bad. I mean, I just saw some testimony from his brother. Nobody liked her. They were always screaming and fighting. I don't know why they stayed together. I really don't.
Maybe he was packing up to leave, but he overpacked. All right. Stupid joke.
Jokes have been made about this case. It's too weird.
I know. It's too weird. It's too weird. Rest in peace. Okay, so the next one you've brought to the table is the au pair double murders.
Yes, this one's a bit confusing, and this case is also unadjudicated, Ryan. So there are a lot of details that we don't know. So you are going to have a lot of questions. Listeners are going to have a lot of questions, and if I speculate, I will let you know that is my speculation.
Sure.
But basically, what we have here is a couple. Brendan and Christine Banfield out of Herndon, Virginia. That's a DC suburb. They're very well off. They live in an almost $1 million house. Brendan worked criminal investigations for the IRS, and Christine is a beloved pediatric nurse. She organized neighborhood bike rides for the kids. Everybody loved her. They have a 4-year-old daughter. I'll just speak in present tense here, for all intents and purposes. And they did what a lot of families do. They hired an au pair. Now, I say the word au pair and not nanny, and this is for people who might not be familiar, but there's a difference here. An au pair comes from an agency overseas. Right. They're generally between the ages of 18 and maybe 23. And what happens is the agency sends them over based on, these interviews that the family does. And it's very, there's a process behind it, if you will, and there's rules behind it. So they had an au pair named Juliana Magalis. She was from Brazil. She came over and worked with them starting in 2021. And gosh, the cliche is very present here.
She hot?
So I said, and then I showed my husband and he's like, you're such a hater. She's hot. And so I guess what I was looking at is her mugshot. So that's why in a mugshot, nobody can look their best
we kind of spoiled it here. We spoiled it here. Boy,
I know. It's okay.
Who's committed the murder? Who's committed the murder?
Well, see, the thing is, I didn't spoil it. That's how weird this case is. Yeah, this case is super weird. So Juliana's 21 years old at the time. She starts this torrid affair with Brendan Banfield and
the dad.
Yes, the dad. Okay. So let's just fast forward here. So just this is probably the most complicated case we're going to speak about today. So it's 2023, it's February, and Juliana has plans to take the 4-year-old daughter to the zoo. This is all happening before 8 a.m. They're leaving the house. Brendan Banfield is allegedly going to work, and Christine is home. Juliana's taking the daughter to the zoo. They leave. She realizes, oops, I forgot our lunches. So, oh, wow, have to come back. I mean, 4-year-old kid, I don't know how old your kids are, but it's like, I guess when they're 4, they have their certain snacks and you kind of need to go back to them and just buy stuff. Yeah, right. So she goes back and she sees a car parked in the driveway and she's like, what's going on here? So according to Juliana, she calls Christine. Christine doesn't answer. So she calls Joseph Ryan to come home. I'm sorry, not Joseph Ryan. I just gave another part away. She calls Brendan Banfield to come home, the husband. So he comes home right away. Apparently, he's not at work. He's at a McDonald's around the corner. So they go inside the house together And according to them, they hear a struggle upstairs. So Juliana brings the daughter down to the basement. Brendan Banfield goes upstairs, allegedly sees his wife, Christine, being stabbed by a stranger who we know as Joseph Ryan now.
Okay.
And Joseph Ryan, allegedly, according to Brendan, stabbing Christine in the neck. So Brendan takes his service weapon. Keep in mind, criminal investigations,
Sure.
IRS, that's why he has a gun. He takes a service weapon, he shoots Joseph Ryan. And Juliana comes up, and according to her, Brendan Banfield says, go get our other Glock in the safe and like shoot him again to make sure he's dead. It's strange. So she does so, shoots him again.
Okay.
And so I want to just let you know that she called Brendan Banfield at 7:37 a.m. By 7:47 a.m., she had called 911, but she hung up. It was weird.
Okay.
And then she called again and hung up. And then by the third time, she's talking to them, and then she gives the phone to Brendan Banfield, who finishes the call. It's very bizarre. No one's heard these calls. No one's really heard the details of these calls, except for the fact that she kept hanging up, and it just sounds weird.
I have a theory, and I don't know if you're going to get into it, but just hearing this for the first time, I have a theory. By the way, I did look up Juliana. Christine is much prettier.
I know. I agree.
Yeah, Juliana's your husband, no fan. I know he married you, so I don't know. It's up to
She's got those spider lashes that Juliana, it seems like those,
she wasn't pretty. She's not that pretty. Maybe because she's a killer too, maybe. But I have a theory. Juliana Brendan, the husband / father, they were having an affair.
Yes.
So they're getting it on. Christina, of course, the wife, they're always in the way. When I want to have an affair, my wife's always in the way. That's just, I know, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. So they decided, well, we got to get rid of her. So we're going to hire somebody to kill her. But while this person's killing her, we're going to intervene in this murder attempt and shoot him dead because he's the witness. He's the murder for hire. So if we kill him, dead man can't speak. So we're going to pay him to kill my wife, but then we're going to kill him in the process of killing my wife because we timed it accordingly. And I have a witness saying, oh, somebody's killing our wife. We just happened to forget our kid's snack or whatever. Boy, what are the odds that someone's killing my wife at the same time we came back for a snack? And then, lo and behold, the hired hitman's dead, plus the woman who's in the way of the affair is dead. That's my theory. What do we got going on here?
Well, Ryan, that's seemingly what most sane people would think, I believe. Okay, or if you are I don't want to say a sane criminal, that just sounds strange, but you'll see what I mean. So, fast forward, they're getting statements from everybody. I mean, Brendan Banfield appears to be totally together. Juliana is beside herself and ends up going down to the police station for about 9 hours that day. And eventually, Juliana gets arrested for second-degree murder. Brendan Banfield not arrested at all. Now,
but didn't he shoot first?
Listen. Okay, so let me get there. So this is February of 2023. It took months to arrest Juliana. She did not get arrested until October of 2023 for second-degree murder. When she was arrested, she had moved into the master bedroom. All of her stuff, there was framed pictures of Brendan and Juliana going on trips together. Really, really disgusting. Really gross.
Weird.
Okay. Ugh. Now, listen to what was I'm fast forwarding. Sure. You know what? Let me just fast forward here. So let's fast forward to September of 2024, a month ago, basically. Brendan Banfield finally gets arrested for the murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. Now, let me tell you what was found. They had been watching this guy for a year. They were trying to get all their ducks in a row to figure out, everything that they thought evidentiary and forensically was possible, so they'd have this bulletproof case. So based on the body position, they found that, Joseph Ryan was repositioned and they had smeared Christine's blood on him and all this stuff. But wait, this is where it gets crazy. They find a BDSM fetish website called FetLife on Christine's computer, Christine Banfield's. Okay. There was an account that is supposed to look like Christine set it up. Okay. There's a picture of Christine in the profile in this bathing suit. She had sent that photo of herself to her husband, like, oh, like, look, I'm in a bit, whatever. If your wife sends you a sexy picture.
Sure.
So Brendan sent that picture to to Juliana. And this is why, digital footprint evidence is so important.
Right.
Sent that to Juliana. Juliana took that photo and emailed it to herself from her. It's so weird. She emailed it to herself, and then it magically appeared on Christine's laptop where the fetish site was set up. So they look into this fetish site and they see that Christine, I'm putting my fingers in quotes, was communicating with a man named Joseph Ryan, who was into quote unquote knife play. So they had been communicating and set up this rendezvous, this knife play rendezvous before 8 a.m. in the morning on a cold February day. And apparently it was knife play gone wrong, according to Brendan and Juliana. And then
wow, there goes my theory.
So this is, and again, nothing has been proven in court yet. Juliana's trial is November of 2024, and Brendan's trial, I'm surprised they pushed that right through. That's happening in February of 2025. Separate trials. There's evidence has emerged of listen, Juliana was in jail for almost a year before he was arrested. They definitely had jailhouse phone calls. One that came out in a recording, something she said along the lines of, well, are you only with me because you're afraid I'm going to tell, or something like that.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I'm sure a lot more is going to come out, but man, if this is true, Brendan Banfield is one, can I swear? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. He is one sick fuck. He was going to let his daughter believe that her mother was murdered basically because she was cheating on her, her daughter's father, and it was her own fault. It makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, it's disgusting. So this one's
crazy.
It's a crazy story. We're going to see documentaries on it. And I spoke about this on Court TV, and it's just like, I don't know if I'm making sense because it's so confusing. And
no, you are.
Yeah. So
I'm hearing this for the first time. So what they did now, I've got a new theory, because that's why I wanted to stop you kind of mid. Okay, that was the initial findings. So what they did was they pretended to be Christine on a BDSM site.
Allegedly.
Sure. So of course, all alleged. But this is my theory. So my theory is, they created the website under Christine's name. That's why the picture was there. That's why Christine, in quotation marks, set up this website, but it was them doing it with her. And then this poor Joseph was into knife play, which is not a crime.
No.
Like, he is into knife play. Like, I don't know this world, but I suspect, like, let's say he's, having sex with consensual with a partner and puts a knife across the throat and puts the point on their belly or whatever. Just the idea of this danger, right? Okay, so he's into knife play. He's not a murderer. They know this, and so when he comes over to do the knife play, he brings his own knives. His fingerprints are all over the knives. Yep. They shoot him. He's not doing anything. They just shot him cold. Yeah. Then they took that knife and stabbed her with it.
I believe Christine might have been stabbed right before, and Joseph Ryan walked into the bedroom and they sneak attacked him. Or Juliana.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's right. They stabbed him. He comes to show up to play. I'm going to have sex with Christine with my knives. He kind of comes in. What the hell's going? Boom, boom, boom. They reposition his body, put the blood. Okay, yeah. So she was already stabbed. And then he was just killed. Okay, wow.
That's my speculation. But you're right. I don't know. And just to add a little bit more about Joseph Ryan, according to friends, he was open about being into some weird sex stuff like BDSM, but he really respected women. He always would ask permission. And it was just sad because he was an innocent bystander. He lived with his mom and his cat, I think. I don't know all the details, but and when they don't release all of this evidence that they have, but I am following these pretrial hearings. And listen to this, Ryan. I mean, Juliana and Brendan went to this shooting range 2 weeks before the murders. Okay. Right. This Glock that he bought, it's only like a month or two old. And then they both got new phones and Juliana wiped her cloud.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, that's a new one. I've never heard of that setup before. That's new. I'm going with they killed the wife. He comes in for a sexy knife play. He gets shot. They set up a crime scene, call 911. That's it.
Yeah.
Fun story. This is great. Very interesting story on that one. Okay. What do you have for number 3?
Yes. So number 3 is an old case that has resurfaced, the Menendez brothers. We all know that the Menendez brothers killed their parents in August of 1990. Kitty and Jose Menendez. Was never a case of who done it. It was always a case of why did they do it.
Yeah.
They've been in prison for 35 years now. And they, at one point, they were facing death. Now, in 2023, their lawyers had filed a habeas petition featuring 2 new pieces of evidence. And now, as of 2005, the brothers had exhausted all appeals and any hopes of ever getting out. They had succumbed to the fact that they would be in prison forever because of their heinous crimes. So, these 2 new pieces of evidence, one was a letter that Eric Menendez wrote his cousin, Andy Cano, a few months before the murders. Now, Andy has passed away. Andy passed away in the early 2000s of a drug overdose, and his mother kept all of his stuff. And journalist Robert Rand, who also wrote the book, The Menendez Murders, he's the leading expert on the case. Marta said, and Marta, by the way, is Jose's sister, said, go through all this stuff, go through it. He ends up finding this letter within an hour. And the letter, it's awful. It says things like, Andy, it's still happening. I can't stand to see the sight of my dad. Something that Eric wrote in the letter that I think is really interesting if you want to analyze it. He said something along the lines of, my dad is so overweight, I can't stand the sight of him, which is something that I feel like you would say about a lover or your wife that you're having issues with, or your husband. Sure. I feel like if it's a parent that's overweight and unhealthy, you'd be like, I'm so concerned. They're not taking care of themselves. But if it's like a spouse or someone that you're sexual with, you're going to be like, oh, they make me sick. I can't stand them. So I thought that was something very telling. The second piece of evidence was a member of Menudo, Roy Rossello, coming out and saying that he was also allegedly sexually assaulted, raped by Jose Menendez in the Menendez house. Now, why it's so important that he added in the Menendez house is that this is where the abuse took place of Eric and Lyle. Eric and Lyle never said their dad abused them or raped them anywhere else besides the house. This seemed to be Jose Menendez's safe place for doing what he did, these unspeakable acts. So with that mounting evidence, Mark Garagos and Cliff Gardner, their attorneys, are like, look, these brothers either deserve a new trial or resentencing. And a resentencing would mean that they've served their time, that this case should have never been murder 1. It should have been manslaughter, or
they should have gotten a medal.
Yeah, I mean,
pat on the head.
Listen, you can't say that these crimes were not brutal and they were not savage. You cannot say that. But also, you can't sit here and say it was first-degree murder.
So the reason why I know they're abused, check it out. I've got a few kids. If one of my kids said to their sibling, hey, let's go blow our father's head off, and they both agree to it, what does that tell you?
You're bad. Two kids agreeing? That's
bad. What I mean. Like, I can imagine one of my kids say, hey, I want to stab dad at night. I can imagine at least the other 5 with whoever the one, right? I'm just saying, what are you talking about?
Yes.
Why are you, the chance of both of them just happen to be cold-blooded murderers for no apparent reason? Alternate universe. DNA for DNA, I raised these 2 brothers as their dad. I raised them the way I raised my kids, and the way they are, just DNA for DNA. Every cell in their body is the same. I would not have been killed by a shotgun blast.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not a danger to society. They're a danger to people who molest them.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And Ryan, I think the big thing here that people who might not be familiar with this case should understand is that their first trial, it was a hung jury. The jury could not decide between manslaughter and murder 1. And I actually recently interviewed a juror. Yeah, so it was called imperfect self-defense because it wasn't like that night their dad was hitting them, punching them, whatever. But it doesn't matter. No, imperfect self-defense is a great defense. But according to this juror that I interviewed, and she said this publicly, it was a battle of the sexes. None of the men on the jury believed the boys, and the women were, of course, believing them. They were saying, this is manslaughter. This is manslaughter. And the men were like, no, this is murder 1. So we have a hung jury. Now, the second trial, we have a few years later, setting the scene. Rodney King just got the shit kicked out of him. There's riots in LA, and the 4 police officers were acquitted under Judge Stanley Weisberg's court, and that's who was presiding over the Menendez trials. Additionally, OJ was just acquitted of. Clearly, we know he's guilty of murdering Nicole Simpson.
We don't know. He was found not guilty. How dare you? The glove didn't fit.
Good one. I know. Trust me. I had somebody block me because I shot down their theory of OJ's son doing it. And I'm like,
I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But I'm like, sorry, right? He did it, and then OJ just became a career fucking criminal after. You're right. He had no. Yeah. But anyway, so second trial, Stanley Weisberg. He wasn't going to take any chances. So in my opinion, this was a complete miscarriage of justice, and they did not get a fair trial. And everybody, whether you believe them or not, you should be scared shitless that this could happen to you. Judge Weisberg actually ruled that they could not use about 80% of their own defense, which was the abuse. He excluded all the witnesses, all the family members that said, Eric and Lyle told me this was happening to them at 10 years old. He excluded them. He excluded the doctors. And the fact that they were facing death, and during the penalty phase, psychologists couldn't come in and say how this shaped their brain to do the act that they did, that might be one of the most unconstitutional things I've ever heard of. If you follow death penalty trials, they will take the time to fly in some nasty motherfucker's 3rd grade teacher to be like, well, in 3rd grade, he did this. Let's all feel bad for him. But like with the Menendez brothers, it was just completely different. So I have to imagine that, the DA is supposed to come out with his recommendation this month. And then the next hearing is November 26th. So Ryan,
okay.
I'm hopeful that they will get out.
We lock up criminals because they're dangerous. Let's say Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy. These are dangerous people. They were serial killers who were preying on people. The Menendez brothers, they were not a danger to anyone but their abusers.
Yes. And just to add, a big part of resentencing is looking back at your record in prison. So as I mentioned before, they had no hopes of ever getting out from 2005 on. And they were model prisoners. So Lyle ran a support group for sexually abused men, survivors. Eric, he mentored people. They both have degrees. They've been amazing in prison when they didn't have to be. This just appears to be who they are.
What a crappy existence.
Yeah.
You're abused by your father, then you're in jail for killing your abuser. What a great life.
Yeah. And people that might say, well, what about Kitty? What did she do? How do you justify that? I mean, it's hard to justify any murder because murder is murder. But Kitty also knew that this was going on. Everybody and family members testified to this. And Kitty also added to the abuse. She abused them in her own way, verbally. And there was some weird touching, but mainly it was a different type of psychological abuse.
Right. If she was if she was afraid and told her sons, I'm sorry, I wish I could do something, I'm scared, she would have been shot. If she shows some sort of semblance of, guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying, but your dad scares me. He's going to kill me if I say anything or do anything. I don't know what to do. I'm in terror with you. I'm sorry. But there was no discussion like that. They talked to her, but she enabled it. And they're like, well, you're just as guilty. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you're just as guilty. I'll tell you right now, if I touched one of my kids, my wife would kill me.
Yeah.
Like, there's no protection with my spouse. She would probably grab a shotgun if we had one, and I'd be dead.
Ryan, no, you're absolutely right. I think you just nailed it. If this mother was like, guess sympathetic, tried to protect them, tried to say, no, Jose, you're not doing this again. You're not. I mean, my son's about to turn 6. I can't imagine. It makes me want to cry and throw up at the same time.
Of course.
And so anyone who says that they don't believe the brothers, I also implore them to look at the fact that they were separated, Ryan, for 21 years, and they did not flip on each other. They did not change their story. That's a long time to keep the same story if you're lying. Okay. I mean, come on. Like that is just,
no, they're not lying. Yeah.
So
Wow, big one. That is a great story. All
yeah.
right. This is awesome. Thank you so much for all your insight. This is so good. Next one. This
Yeah.
is Ana Walsh. Ana Walsh. Do I know this story?
No,
Maybe.
you probably don't.
Okay.
This is pretty terrible, Ryan. Ana Walsh, she was a beautiful 39-year-old mother from Cohasset, Massachusetts. She had a wonderful job in real estate. She was originally from, gosh, what I forget exactly where, Croatia. That's where she was originally from.
Oh,
So she moved to the US and she married Brian Walsh, and they had 2 sons together.
okay.
So they their marriage seemed to be going well, but then Brian had some legal issues. He was selling fake art, like very expensive art, and he was busted for it. So he was set to go to prison at some point. And Anna, he suspected she was possibly having an affair. She traveled a lot for work. So Anna's official disappearance date was January 1st, 2023. And by the
Oh,
way,
wow.
What's that?
This is very recent.
Yes, this is recent. So Cohasset, Massachusetts is also like 45 minutes outside of Boston. It's very small, it's affluent, it's nice. And so according to Brian, they had some friends over or a friend over the night before for New Year's Eve dinner. And Anna had a work emergency that she had to leave for the next day. She had to fly out to DC or something like that. Well, she never made it. So
Okay.
Brian, reports her missing. And this is where it just gets crazy. And his lies just continue, and he's eventually caught with in multiple lies here. He tells them that he also has an ankle monitor at this point, by the way, because he's about to go to jail for this art fraud shit. So he tells police, oh, I went here, I went there, my kids are with the babysitter, and I don't know anything about Anna. Well, his what he was doing that morning is making multiple trips to Home Depot to
Do some home renovations in the new year,
yeah,
or?
to literally buy some hatchet saws. I'm not kidding.
Oh,
Home
okay.
Depot. There was he disposed of some garbage, Ryan, and
Weird.
then yeah,
Okay.
really really weird. So and then it was later found, all of these ridiculous Google searches. I mean, when will criminals ever know to stop? Right? I mean, like,
where's the best place to take apart a corpse? What joints should I saw
no,
at?
literally. But what this moron did was he thought that if he Googled this on like his 2-year-old son's iPad, somehow it wouldn't be found. Like, it's not all connected. But he
Oh.
literally Googled, like, how long does it take for a body to start to smell or something stupid stuff like that. So yeah, so he's eventually charged, but this is a no body homicide charge. They have not found Ana Walsh yet, Ryan. So
Okay.
Brian Walsh has not gone to trial yet. I mean, like I said, despite the evidence does seem to be overwhelming with these grisly
Circumstantial?
internet searches. Yeah, the fact that he's bought a hatchet saw, the fact that he lied where he was going. And so it all does point to him. However, there is a tiny little snag. The lead investigator in this case is a Massachusetts state police officer named Michael Proctor, who is currently suspended without pay due to his behavior in the Karen Reed murder trial. Who, that's a separate one, but I can't even get into that here. But Karen Reed was on trial over the summer for the killing of her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. That ended in a mistrial, so she's going to be retried in January. But what was revealed during that trial is that Michael Proctor is not necessarily an unbiased investigator. He had these text messages that he was referring to Karen Reed, where he was talking about her ass, that she was retarded. He said those words. He said that he hopes she kills herself. And I'm not kidding. She has MS. And he was texting other cops and like his high school friends that she had, quote unquote, a leaky balloon knot. I know. I'm not a naive person, but like I had never heard of that. I'm like, that's so fucking gross, like for someone to say. So yeah.
Jeez.
So Brian Walsh's lawyers now are like, well, Michael Proctor did investigate this. So
He sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, he seems like a really stand-up guy. So hopefully, everything goes according to plan here with this trial, and all evidence does point to Brian, in my opinion. So I
Oh, of
believe,
course.
yeah, his case is going to be coming to trial in 2025. So
Yeah. Like, heaven forbid anything happens to my wife. This is why circumstantial evidence is important, because Occam's razor. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Meaning, let's say my wife, heaven forbid, she goes missing right now and today. What are the chances that she goes missing today? That it's the same day I buy a hacksaw, that I have internet
no.
searches about decomposing bodies. Like, what would be the odds that I just innocently had those searches? Which is a possibility that you could just be curious how long I just watched a true crime show, so I'm curious, how long does it take for a body to decompose? That's it. Doesn't mean you're a murderer because but the problem is I did that search within the time frame that my wife goes missing. There's a reason why circumstantial evidence does exist.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe in coincidences personally?
No, and I haven't done those searches, so they can't. I haven't. So if my wife goes missing, guess what? They won't have anything. I haven't bought anything weird. I don't have any weird searches. I don't have any torrid affairs. I don't have any gambling debts. So, all these things would point to, I guess, the husband's kind of clean. What do you need, officers? What do you need? Blood tests, DNA.
Yeah.
I want you to find the killer. So let's quickly. I know the story. You got to eliminate me as a suspect. I know I'm the husband. I'm the first suspect. I got it. No offense taken. What do you need for me to eliminate me so you can move on with the real killer?
Yeah, and Brian Walsh didn't do that. He sent them on a wild goose chase because they wanted to verify where he was and what he did. So they lost time in trying to find Ana so they could verify what he was doing, which is why he was charged with so many other charges like obstruction and things like that. I think it was improper conveyance of a human body, murder, and then misleading a police investigation.
Okay, so now we're going to end with the last big case. Of course, you'd have to literally be living under a rock to not know this case. But maybe for those who only know the headline, so to speak, or the arrest itself, why don't you give us what this guy is actually in trouble for? Why is he arrested? Why is Mr. P. Diddy in trouble? Tell us.
Yes. So most people, like you said, unless they're living under a rock, are well aware that Sean Combs, aka Puffy, Diddy, whatever you want to call him, he was arrested in September of 2024 on federal charges related to sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and transportation for prostitution. These are 3 federal charges, Ryan. These are very, very damning charges. I mean, human trafficking federally, that holds a minimum of 25 years in prison, I believe. So these aren't small things. And now concurrently, what we're seeing pretty much daily or weekly, I was going to say, if not daily, is more civil suits coming out in civil court. So basically, if he doesn't, which by the way, I believe he will be in jail for a long time, but if for some reason he's not, he will be broke as hell from paying out so much money with these civil suits. I don't know the exact.
I'm sad to hear that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You said you're sad to hear that. Yeah. I'm fine hearing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine hearing that. I just, I woke up this morning, I had family in town, and usually I'm so on top of these, but I believe the count for civil suits last week was up to 19. As of Monday, October 21st, I want to make sure I have dates because, like I said, it changes by the day. I believe it's up to like 23 or something like that. There was one particular suit that came out last week, Ryan, that it gave me nightmares. I mean, Cassie Ventura's I feel like she spearheaded this whole thing. We've all seen that horrible hotel footage, which, by the way, Diddy's lawyers have accused the feds and the government of leaking this footage on a slow news day. And they are also trying to get that excluded as evidence in his federal trafficking trial, which
care what the reasons are. You did this thing. Just don't beat up people in the hallway of hotels and don't worry when it gets leaked.
Ryan, that's exactly right. This is nobody's fault except for the fault of Sean Combs. I mean, he didn't have to do that. And come on, man, Cassie's team leaked that. Like, shut up. The feds didn't fucking leak that. I mean, they have so much on him, between whatever they found in the HSI raid back in March of 2024 and with what they're seeing now on his 90 plus phones. I mean, come on. And I think it's really important to know that he has tried for bail 3 times and he's going, he's going back to try again. And it's not so much that they think he is a flight risk, right? He's loaded. He could take off, but it's not so much that. It's more of the Jeffrey Epstein thing where he is intimidating witnesses. I mean, when he, I believe it was the Don Richards, Danity Kane lawsuit, when that lawsuit dropped, somebody was named in that suit. I'm blanking on her name right now. Kalena something. She was another singer. But Don said, oh, Kalena saw Diddy do this too. Well, Diddy texted Kalena about 48 times after that lawsuit dropped saying, come out and say you never saw me do that and blah, blah, blah. And guess what? She did. She made an announcement saying, well, in my experience, I never saw this. So yeah. So the court's like, no way. You're not getting out. You're going to intimidate all these witnesses.
Right.
And his lawyers have put forth this insane motion being like, this is what we will do if they offered $50 million posted. And even so, the judge is like, no way, no how. Now, my only concern about this, Ryan, and my concern about the whole thing here is he can slip on some baby oil in MDC and hit his head and kick the bucket tomorrow. My life will go on. I'll pray for his family, whatever. I'll be fine. I don't care about him. I think he's guilty. I truly do. However, I want to make sure he gets a fair trial. I'm not sure right now that's necessarily happening without a gag order. And they, his team has motioned for a gag order from the media because I think it might be helpful just so we don't give him his defense on a silver platter, which is I'm not getting a fair trial and everybody wants my money. There was a huge press conference with the Busby law firm out of Houston, Texas, or somewhere in Texas, where they said, we've got over 3,000 calls that we've had to vet through of people coming forward and saying they were assaulted by Diddy. And, among one of those allegations was a 9-year-old, they said. And I'm thinking to myself, how responsible is this to come forward with these allegations without, I don't know if proof is the right word because they are putting forth a lawsuit. So I'm guessing they have enough, but I don't know. I feel super strange about it. And that's just me. I don't want to get hate for this. I mean, I'm used to that, but I believe them. I think he's guilty, but I also am kind of like, all right, when does it stop? Where is the line between a law firm getting PR, being the case, and also them actually being concerned for victims and other victims or survivors, I should say.
It's a mess. It's a mess because it's complicated by his stature, by his money, by his celebrity. And I don't know how this is going to end. You're right. I don't think he'll ever see the light of day outside of jail again. We can probably guarantee that whether he Epstein's himself or not in jail or something happens to him in jail, he'll never leave jail again. I think he's in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about this too. And right now he's in Metropolitan Detention Center, which is in Brooklyn, New York. And that is not the same federal jail as where Jeffrey Epstein was. He was in the Metropolitan Correctional Center, which was in Manhattan, which is now closed. So that closed shortly after I'm just going to say it, Jeffrey Epstein's homicide. So
how dare you? Dare you?
I said it. Okay. But with MDC, where Diddy is now, I mean, I think it's just this jail. It's Rikers is the county jail, so to speak, of New York. Right. So Rikers has a horrible reputation. It's disgusting. It's overcrowded. I mean, it's horrific. MDC makes Rikers look pretty good, I have to say.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's pretty bad in there. And I was actually at the courthouse, the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, for his last hearing. And I mean, just seeing that MDC van pull up was just like, it was so chilling. It's such a gross. Yeah, I mean, so we can't see Diddy. He's inside. And I did not have a press pass, so I was not allowed inside the courtroom. I need to get on that. I'm so lazy. It's such a fucking process to get that in New York City. But so I was outside waiting for his lawyers to speak and waiting for, just them to take questions. And they didn't, unfortunately. But that's also because they're really trying to push this gag order. But what they did say was that it's possible Diddy could be facing more charges.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Yay, more victims. Okay. Okay. So we've done 5 stories. I hope our listeners are like me. I was fascinated by, number one, I can see why you do this. You did a great job delivering this. Your insight knowledge was amazing. Truly, Lauren, it was a treat listening to you. I was just an audience member in this. I really didn't say much, which is good. Nobody wants to hear me talk. I talk all the time. People are tired of my voice anyways.
That's
So
not
it's nice to have somebody on who knows what they're talking about on our show. So this is your background. You've got all these stories in your head. It's amazing. I don't know how you keep track of all this stuff.
I don't either.
So I do have a worst pick. I'll tell you my reasons why. And so the way I looked at this, what you delivered today, these 5 fascinating stories of crime, murder, you name it. When I speak of murder, I think P. Diddy, I don't think he's, I look, allegedly, or I think he's had his hand in some of that stuff too. Tupac Shakur, stuff like that. So
me too.
Yeah. So let's just say I think every single one of these involve murder. Yeah, they do. Or someone's death. But I'll say this, the one that is the worst for me on this list, because this is the best headline grabbing kind of current affair true crime, you could say. This is kind of current. All this stuff is current, ongoing, is kind of what we're looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to figure out how to title this episode, but that's what I'm getting from the theme of what you delivered today. I'm going to go with the worst, and the one that angers me the most is the Menendez brothers, because they shouldn't be on the list, but they are. It sucks that they're here. Everyone else who's on trial, who's in jail or prison or whatever, or who is still being looked into for disappearances or whatever it is, they belong on the list, right? Yeah. They need to be investigated. They need to be held accountable. The Menendez brothers have done more than serve their time. I don't know why they're not out of jail yet. It's insanity to me they're ever put in jail. It's insanity to me that they're still in jail. They were abused by their dad, end of story, and their mother. End of story. The parents had it coming. It doesn't break my heart at all. I'm sick of this crap. I'm sick of people abusing in general, and I'm sick of child abuse. I'm just so tired of it. So Menendez brothers should have gotten a freaking medal and a pat on the head. But no, they go to jail instead. So it angers me that they went through this as young people for years. And then on top of that, now they're in jail for killing the people that were hurting them. It breaks my heart.
Well, I agree with you, but I disagree that they needed to go to prison. You can't just go around committing murder. It's brutally.
No, I know. I know you can't really do, because at some point you can't just tell, oh, but my dad didn't give me ice cream, so I killed him. I understand there has to be some sort of,
Yeah, I don't even necessarily mean that. I just mean that, all abuse victims cannot go around viciously and savagely murdering their parents or whoever abused them. However, I agree with everything you said. I believe that inside that courtroom, and unfortunately, Ryan, it doesn't matter what happens outside the courtroom as much as what happens inside the courtroom. It's unfortunate that it's just what we can prove here. So I believe that what was proven in the first trial in that courtroom was that these brothers acted in imperfect self-defense, and that they should have been convicted of manslaughter. They should have been out in 15 to 20 years. That's it. 15 years they should have gotten, maybe out. But, so it's like, you have to serve your time. You have to obey the law. That's why we have laws. But
of course,
they did not get a fair trial the second time. And that is just, like I said, everybody should be terrified, because if they can't get a fair trial and they had money and they had, this notoriety, well, then what does it say about the rest of us?
No, I agree. But you're right. There has to be law and order. You're right. Or else we're going to get to the point where everyone's going to feel it. It has to be a precedence, because you're right. If you say they're innocent because they did that, because there's that court precedence, because they'd say, well, we'll just refer to the Menendez versus whatever. They shot their parents because they were mistreated. What the line now of abuse? Like, can I stab my father in the arm? Can I? But now, with that being said, do you have a worst pick as well? Is it different? And what are your reasons for your worst pick and why?
Yeah, I mean, all of these are horrible. The double murders has really stuck with me for many reasons. I mean, I feel horrible for Joseph Ryan, but Christine Banfield, I'm kind of like, man, this woman did not even see this affair going on in her house. It's awful. But I think that's a second place for me. I am pretty sure the Menendez brothers, if I had to guess, they are going to be getting resentenced in November, if I had to guess. So I would say my worst is probably Diddy. And that's simply based on some of these lawsuits that we didn't necessarily get into. But if anybody does have time, I would go ahead and read the 30-page Cassie Ventura lawsuit, and I would read the most recent Ashley Parham lawsuit from last week. Both women use their names. Now, the Ashley Parham lawsuit is something out of a horror movie. You might read this and think, this doesn't really make sense. Why would she do XYZ? She's using her name. She wants a jury trial. She's pretty confident here. So the only thing I'll say about that is, and not to upset any listeners, but trigger warning, in that lawsuit, she says he threatened to give her a Glasgow smile with a knife. They gang raped her with objects everywhere. And it just gets worse and worse. So my worst is Diddy. He's allegedly a monster.
So you went to the route of he's the worst person on the list. I like it.
Correct.
I like it. I love it. That's what I love. We had our different reasons for worst pick. I love it. Lauren, it's been an absolute treat. Really, I'm not just saying that. You're wonderful. You have a great podcast personality, on-air personality. You could have easily been, I could see you being on like a CNN or next to the new Nancy Grace. So keep plugging away at it. Nice. Yeah, I know you're doing great. You. And let people know before you leave again where they can find you.
Yes. Well, first of all, that was the nicest compliment. I'm obsessed with Nancy Grace. I could never fill her shoes, but I love you for that. Thank you so much. I'm never going to forget that. I'm going to replay that over and over.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, no, you can find me out on YouTube at Pop Crime TV and at Primetime Crime Show. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter at Conlin_Lauren. And I'm very active on TikTok as well, which is Lauren Conlin 4.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. Now, remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud. And today, for me, it was a Menendez Brothers. And for Lauren, it was P. Diddy.